kid who swings a golf club like a dream. I'd like to try to qualify him for the U.S. Amateurs.
Coming to Apple TV Plus.
What's your name?
I'm not into older guys, but I'm flattered.
A new comedy series, Stick.
I don't want to go on this trip.
Your mouth's saying one thing, but those eyes are saying something else.
From the home of Ted Lasso.
This is your shot at redemption? This is your mulligan?
Owen Wilson.
This game takes and it takes. The game's finally giving me something back.
Stick.
You know Arnold Palmer?
Iced tea, lemonade, mix it.
I'm missing a nap for this.
Streaming June 4th on Apple TV Plus.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
Buckeye Talk is about to begin. Hey, 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 come on in.
Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. I'm Stephen Means, that's Stefan Krajisnik, and that is Andrew Gillis. Day 2 of our Final Four discussion, but we're not doing the matchup style this time. We're just putting all 4 of them against each other for our greatest Buckeye bracket. It's Archie Griffin, Eddie George, Chris Spielman, and James Laurinaitis. Yesterday, we ranked them based off of their accolades and stats, team success, and who has the best moment as an Ohio State football player. And now we head into the success against Michigan. James Laurinaitis 4-0 against Michigan, 25-21, 49-39, 14-3, 42-7. Those are his scores from 2005 to 2008. Archie Griffin 3-0-1 against Michigan, 14-11, 10-10, 12-10, 21-14. Are his scores from 1972 to 1975. Eddie George 1-2-1, 13-13, 28-0, 22-6, 31-23. Those are his scores while going up against Michigan from 1992 to 1995. And then Chris Spielman 2-2, 21-6, 27-17, 26-24, and 23-20. From 1984 to 1987, losses in 85 and 86, wins in 84 and 87. Eddie George, losses in 93 and 95. His only one came in 1994. So I was alive. I was alive for an Eddie George win. While Archie Griffin obviously tying in 1973 and then winning the other 3 times. I don't know if this is as nuanced a conversation, Stefan, as Aura is going to be, which is why I paired these two, because this is probably a 15-minute conversation, while Aura is a 30-minute conversation, because this is just, you either did it or you didn't. And I'm not sure Eddie George with only 1 win over Michigan can be any higher.
Yeah, it actually kind of outlines itself perfectly in terms of like 1 through 4 on these rankings because of record. I mean, you could debate the ties and things of that nature, but when you're undefeated against Michigan, that's pretty strong.
Especially, Andrew, in a world where these 4 guys had an impact in all 4 of their games. Now, obviously, Eddie George's impact got greater as the time went on. In fact, in 1994, his first year as a starter, they did win the game. So as a full-time RB1, he's actually 1-1 against Michigan. But still, the fact that you're talking about 4 guys where there are 4 games against Michigan, all of them had a role. So you can't say, oh, they lost, but they were watching from the sideline because they were young guys, or they won, but they had nothing to do with it. It's pretty clear cut.
Yeah, and it's that, and it helps that, like you said, just frankly, that these guys were around for 4 years rather than, 3 and done. I think that matters as well. 1, just because you have a greater chance of beating Michigan, but 2, for other categories, like you kind of linger in the minds of Ohio State fans, right? If my dad and I joke all the time that Chris Olave played at Ohio State for 7 years. And then the next time we talk about it, we're like, yeah, Olave was at Ohio State for 11 years. And then the next time he was at Ohio State for 17 years. And it just, whenever you have those conversations about the guys that win games, it's like, oh man, they were here for forever, right? Because I remember him playing 4 years ago, and that feels like forever. That's a presidential term ago. And that guy beat Michigan that year, and now he's beating him this year. So I think the longevity matters. And, like when you compare like some of these teams, right? Like obviously when you beat a good Michigan team, that matters as well. So yeah, the longevity point I thought was notable when you had these kind of layouts of just some of these guys were around for 4 years. They contributed. They beat really good Michigan teams, and really all of them had, like you said, consequential moments and consequential games against Michigan. And that I thought was really cool. I thought it gave us a nice even playing field rather than, one guy had, a 3-year career at Ohio State, and the first year he was a redshirt, and then the second year they won, and the third year they lost, and then he went pro. And it was like, well, how do you judge that? And I thought we actually had a really nice grouping of 4 here to talk about Ohio State versus Michigan success.
Did either one of you take into account the level of opponent when looking at these records as maybe a tiebreaker when you're trying to rank these guys?
I think you have to. I think when you talk about this, like, go look at Archie from 72 to 75. Michigan was number 3. They were number 3, number 4, and I believe number 2. They were number 4. So yeah, so they were 3, 4, 3, 4. Like, James Laurinaitis from 05 to 08 played great Michigan teams, and they were 17, 2, 23, and unranked. So I think if you want to weight that more heavily, I think that's fair. I think you have to, because it just, quite simply, what is a more impressive Ohio State win over Michigan if it would have happened in 2024 or 2023? Because of what the win would have meant for the season, of the type of team Michigan had, and I know they lost both those games. Michigan was objectively far better in 2023 and 2024, and I just don't think you can ignore that in a conversation like this.
Another thing that's interesting with the Michigan category is, and I think you touched on this, Gillis, at one point when we were talking about Archie Griffin's record against Michigan. It's also fascinating to see kind of all the different eras of this rivalry that are represented in this. Like with Archie, we talked about how they didn't lose to Michigan his 4 years there. And in the 4 years sandwiching it, Michigan won every time. And I think with Teddy George, it's kind of in this mix of where Michigan had a lot of success in the rivalry. With James Laurinaitis, it was really what ignited the most dominant stretch in this rivalry. With Spielman, it's another thing where it's like he didn't have a great record, but there was a stretch there where Ohio State's only 2 wins in that rivalry were while he was there. So it's like you have a lot of this rivalry is very storied. It's why it's part of the 5 requirements to being the greatest Buckeye, and we've kind of got a lot of different eras of it represented just in these 4 guys alone.
I'm so curious too when you look at, I'm sure we all looked at that. It's a great resource, that Wikipedia page, where it just has every result of Ohio State Michigan for forever. And the last tie in the series was 1992. It was a 13-13 tie. The ties are interesting as a part of this conversation because we didn't live in that world where ties were part of college football, right? We don't imagine the 2016 Ohio State Michigan game ending in a tie. How do we feel about that? I don't know. And this is a good question for our texter, 614-350-3315. If you remember the 92 game, or if you remember the 73 game where it was a 10-10 tie or a 13-13 tie, how should we view that? Is it
the underdog is happy and the favorite is like, what just happened?
It feels like you lost, but you didn't. I don't know. Ties were a part of college football history. I remember there was a famous college football game in 1960 something where it was between Notre Dame and Michigan State, I think, and a sports writer was tie 1 for the Gipper because he thought that Notre Dame should have tried to win the game, and it's like, well, how do Ohio State feel? How do Ohio State fans feel about that? The 1973 game that was a 10-10 tie. And it felt like Michigan thought that they had the better game, but Ohio State went to the Rose Bowl and blah, blah, blah. It's like, I don't know. It's an interesting part of this dynamic because of Archie, James Laurinaitis went 4-0, Archie went 3-0-1. So did Archie never lose to Michigan, or does James Laurinaitis? I don't know. I had an interesting thought kind of experiment, kind of looking through the history of these games with ties.
Technically speaking, he did never lose to Michigan. I'm just looking at their rankings at the time that these games were played. Archie Griffin in 1972, when they won 14-11, Ohio State was 9, Michigan was 3. In 1973, when they tied, Ohio State was 2, Michigan was 4. In 1974, when Ohio State won 12-10, Ohio State was 4, Michigan was 3. In 1975, when they won 21-14, Ohio State was 1, Michigan was 4. So top 3 top 5 matchups and 1 top 10 matchup. And that includes 2 times when Ohio State was the lower ranked seed and they beat Ohio State. With Chris Spielman from 1984 to 1987. In 1984, when they won 21-6, they were ranked 11th, while Michigan was unranked. In 1985, when they lost 27-17, they were 12th. Michigan was 6th. 1986, when they lost 26-24, Ohio State was 6th. Michigan was 7th. And then in 1987, neither one of them were ranked, which is just, I don't know how often that has happened in Ohio State and Michigan, that game's history, where neither one of them were ranked. For Eddie George, 1992 to 1995. In 1992, they tied, and Michigan was number 6. Ohio State was number 13. When Michigan shut out Ohio State, I think this is probably the most embarrassing loss of the John Cooper era, because Ohio State was ranked 5th in those rankings and Michigan was unranked. So as much as we want, Ryan Day lost to an unranked Michigan team 13-10. At least he got on the scoreboard. In 1994, Ohio State was number 22 and Michigan was number 15, and Ohio State won that one 22-6. And then in 1995, Ohio State number 2, Michigan number 18. So again, Ohio State wins that game, putting themselves in a position to win a national championship, and they lose that game 31-23. And just to throw Orlando Paces in there too, the very next year, Michigan is number 21 and Ohio State's number 2, and they lose 13-9. James Laurinaitis, in 2005, Ohio State is number 9, Michigan is number 17, and Ohio State wins 25-21. In 2006, the game of the century, even though we're 6 years into the century, Ohio State's 1, Michigan's 2. Ohio State wins that one 42-39. The very next year, Ohio State's number 7 and Michigan's number 23. The Buckeyes win 14-3. And then in the final one of James Laurinaitis' career, and it was the first of 3 straight years that Michigan was unranked in the game, and the first of 4 straight years, at least one of them wouldn't be ranked heading into this game. And in the first of what was like 6 and 7 years that one of them wasn't ranked, Ohio State wins 42-7 as the number 10 team in the country, and Michigan was unranked. I thought about putting Archie number 1 because of that context of 4 straight years. These are 2 of the 5 best teams in college football, and they're playing against each other. So there's this element of how we talk about John Cooper not only lost to Michigan, sometimes he lost to bad Michigan teams. How we did with Ryan Day at times before 2024. Hey, I understand he's losing to Michigan, but he's playing all good Michigan teams. And this is pre-Connor Stallions, of course, but go look at some of the teams that Urban Meyer and Jim Tressel were playing against. They were not nearly as good as some of these Michigan teams were, especially when you look at the rankings. Well, Archie played against that every year. And he went 3-0 against Michigan with 1 tie. He never lost to them. But I went James Laurinaitis 1, Archie Griffin 2, Spielman 3, Eddie George has to be 4. He won once. Spielman has multiple losses. I went James over Archie simply because of while Archie played all good Michigan teams, James Laurinaitis was at the heart of how Ohio State dominated this rivalry for almost 20 years.
Yeah, I think we talked about it a little bit with AJ Hawk too, where we were like, he was part of that group that really kind of started the most dominant run in the rivalry's history. I don't care how bad that Michigan team is, to not stumble for that long of a stretch is impressive. And I think James and AJ and those guys were all kind of part of that group. So yeah, I gave James the edge for that reason, with Archie as a close second.
Are you following that order, Andrew?
Flip 1 and 2. I had Archie 1. I promise I'm not doing that to be...
Stop it. I don't want you to apologize for saying the dude who is probably going to win this thing should probably be number 1.
No, I'm saying it's always funny when it's like, here's my case. I'm Stephen Means, XYZ. And Stefan goes, I agree with your XYZ case, Stephen Means. And I go, actually, it's ABC.
Yeah, but that's the thing.
I promise I'm not doing the sports radio bit where I'm just agreeing or disagreeing to disagree. I actually think it's Archie. I think you have to take into account how good those Michigan teams were. The fact that there was more riding on those games than in a lot of years, because, if you don't win that game, I think you could make the case, well, it's like, all right, well, then you don't have a chance to go to the Rose Bowl, and then your season's cooked, and you lost to Michigan, and you don't go to the Rose Bowl.
Isn't that true for James, though?
It is a little bit. You did have some, like in 2006, you did have, like we talked about it on conversation as like a back-end opportunity in the BCS era.
For sure. Who backed in, though? back then. I don't think there was a lot of backdooring in.
Florida backed in technically, but
Okay,
it wasn't
yeah,
Ohio State or Michigan.
Oh, the SEC backed into something?
And then no, I see, but you can't say that because then Florida won by 4 touchdowns.
No, for sure. I mean, Ohio State also lost a dude who ran a 4.2 on the first play of the game. That's not, I mean, granted, that's not the difference between 41 and 14 Ohio State winning that game. But I don't think that's backing in. That's the team who was ahead of you losing and putting you in that position, because that's how the only thing I disagree with how you got there is the idea of Archie and James's era being that different in terms of the value of the mission. Ohio State played in back-to-back national championship games, and if they lose those games against Michigan, they don't play in back-to-back national championship games. And that's true of the Archie era too, where if Archie loses, then, well, any chance of winning a national championship doesn't exist. But if your logic is, well, it was true for both teams every single time, and not just from the Ohio State perspective, I can get in line with that. Because you brought up 2023, 2022. Those were 2 years where both of those teams are 2 and 3. 2006 is valued the way it is because one of these teams is playing for a national championship, and the other one has to take a consolatory prize when they should probably also be competing for a national championship, which is exactly what the 70s were for Ohio State and Michigan. So if Stefan and I are leaning more into James Laurinaitis started a run, while you're leaning into more of a, dude, both of these teams had national championships on the line. I get how you got to Archie.
Well, and also, like, I made that point, and I'm glad Stefan brought it up. Go look at, like, the 10-year war, like, from that era. From 66 to 80. Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan, Ohio State, tie, Ohio State, Ohio State. That 4-year run was Archie. Michigan, 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 Ohio State, Michigan. Like, it was supremely back and forth, and then Archie shows up, they go 3-0-1, and then as soon as Archie leaves, they go 0-3, and they scored a total of 9 points from 76 to 78. I'm not saying that was all Archie, but I'm saying that when you, like, if the argument for the Laurinaitis thing, which is a totally fair and valid argument, is this was the dominating stretch, and it began the dominating stretch of Michigan, and it turned the rivalry on its head, then that's totally fair. I think you also have to, like, acknowledge, and I'm not saying you guys have to acknowledge, I'm just saying that I think the other argument has to acknowledge that winning 3 out of 4 and not losing that 4th in an era where the rivalry was so even is also very impressive. You made that time of the rivalry look like the mid 2000s, and that was not the way that things had been trending for many years.
James never tied or lost. He just won. Let me ask you guys a question. Do you think we ever see another 10-year war?
It's possible. You need, I think, frankly, I think Ohio State winning the national championship last year gave that more legs than it otherwise would have. Because now, how many people are really questioning Ryan Day's future at Ohio State? Like, the 10-year war, because of players changing, was Woody Hayes and Bo Schembechler. And that was, you had 2 eccentric coaches, and I think you had a shot of that with Harbaugh, but you need Sharon Moore and Ryan Day, I think, to be at those schools for a little bit. You need the rivalry to flip back to Ohio State, and then you can have a 10-year war. Then you can have, I think, another, hey, both these teams are good. They're competing for playoff spots every year. They're competing for a spot in the Big Ten championship game, or whether or not the Big Ten championship game exists. Maybe we go back to the whole, there is no conference championship game. The Big Ten title is on the line when these two teams play again. I don't know. But I think you need longevity at the head coaching spots, and I think you've got that now with Ryan. Do you have that with Sharon? And if you do, if Ohio State flips it back on its head, I think it's absolutely possible.
Well, what's interesting, too, is, like, looking at the 10-year war, is, like, it started off flip-flopping, and then you had strong Ohio State stretch, strong Michigan stretch. So is maybe the strong Michigan stretch coming to an end at Harbaugh stretch plus 1 year of Sharon Moore? And now is it going to be Ohio State for 4 straight years? And then you flip-flop? Maybe you just have the inverse? It would be interesting, I guess. I don't think it's impossible. Like, if I told you Ohio State's going to win the next 4 and then they'll trade, like, the next 4 after that, would you be stunned? It doesn't help that I'm asking this when Michigan just got the number 1 quarterback in the country, and this is the start of 3 or 4 years with him, but...
Sure, but it's not like Tavian St. Clair's not far off from Bryce Underwood. Right. He's just in a room where they don't need him to be that, whatever he's going to turn into be on August 30th, the same way Michigan needs Bryce Underwood to be the guy who's on the cover of a video game. And like Bryce Underwood has to have a Trevor Lawrence year. Tavian St. Clair freshman year can look like
Julian Sands,
and then some, because if Julian Sands is what we think he is, Ohio State doesn't need Tavian St. Clair for 2 years. Michigan needs Bryce Underwood today, which is why they flipped him from LSU, using every resource they could to flip him from LSU. I think my worry is about a 10-year war and whether it's possible. It's two things at play. The starter thing is the thing we keep joking about. We take Ohio State against every team that's not wearing maize and blue with winged helmets at this point, because Ohio State just murdered all of college football, but somehow still lost to its rival who lost 5 games. But if you just looked at these rosters blindly and took the names away, I just think logically you'd pick the team with way more NFL talent going forward. And Michigan's first-round NFL talent even Will Johnson didn't even be in a first-round draft pick. And maybe some of that is because health and all that different stuff. But if you told me right now to answer the question of who has more NFL guys drafted over the next 4 years, I would say Ohio State, and it's not close. So just based off that logic alone, you want to say, well, Ryan Day is going to flip this. He's going to get this thing back in order, and he's going to run off the next 4 of these. But we just know that's not how this works at this point. So there's that element of it. There's just something about the Michigan game that Ryan Day can't seem to crack. And that's his flaw as a head coach now. Everything else is great. He can go win national titles. He can compete in this new era of college football. They're recruiting at a high level. The NIL seems to have figured itself out. They can go get what they need out of the transfer portal. But for whatever reason, that last week of November, it's just not clicking for whatever reason. So you have that in the back of your head. But also, Connor Stallions. So let's just say we do get what you're talking about, Stefan, this. Maybe now Ohio State runs off another 3, and now it starts flip-flopping back and forth. How many of these Michigan ones do people count? Officially, I think we might find out that answer a week from today. But there's also, how people talk about that era, right? And if you can't, what are we going to do? 30 years from now when people are asking us to sit down and talk about how we cover this era, what are we going to do? Be like, oh, I remember when Ryan Day lost the first 3 and lost the first 4, but it's like, yeah, but like the first 3 don't count because somebody was cheating. So it's hard. And there's also that element of just like the juice. I'm not sure if Sharon Moore has like the figure. Yeah, because that's the thing about Woody and Bo. They were also figures that you remember. And we're so early into the Sharon Moore era that it's hard to really gauge that right now.
It would have to still be Harbaugh.
Yeah.
Harbaugh had the figure for obvious reasons.
You need a
player who is now back, who was already a pretty awesome head coach before he got here.
And I think I wonder if like player news and player popularity has attributed to that, because like when you think of the 10-year war, who are the first 2 people you think of? Woody Hayes and Bo Schembechler. You don't think of
true though.
I think it can be, but like I go to a guy like I think the players have reached a point of popularity, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, or I'm not saying this a bad way. I wonder if people are not going to view it across a 10-year scope. I think they're going to look at it because, it is much more player driven. Players are much more out in the open. Ohio State fans will know Chris Henry Jr. for longer before his Ohio State career than his Ohio State career might last. Like, I think when you talk about the longevity of it all, I think you need staying power for it to be considered a 10-year war. Now, like if you want to say, like if Tavian St. Clair for some reason somehow starts this game against Michigan at the end of the year and it's Tavian St. Clair versus Bryce Underwood, then you can have like a 3-year debate. But I think you need staying power in that for people to really kind of group that together, group a decade together. And I think obviously the only way to do that would be through your head coach.
Right. Players are more notable today, but they're also only around 3 to 5 years, or 25 if you're playing for Utah as a quarterback. It has to be like 10 years from now, Tavian St. Clair is 100% not going to be here. Ryan Day probably will still be here. 10 years from now, Bryce Underwood is not going to be living in Ann Arbor playing football. Sharon Moore might be, though. So it still comes, even the Urban Meyer and Jim Tressel era, we're talking about the players, but it's under the umbrella of James Laurinaitis as one of Jim Tressel's great players. Ezekiel Elliott's one of Urban Meyer's great players. Archie Griffin is still to this day, and I guess this can lead us into the next part of this conversation, Archie Griffin is still to this day, I think, the only one who transcends the coach he plays for, even though he played for the most famous Ohio State football coach of all time.
That's fair.
So let's sit on that as we transcend from Michigan talk to Aura talk here on Buckeye Talk.
So, you just started using LinkedIn Premium. Now what? Well, on your premium company page, you noticed around 7.5 times more page engagement and 5 times more page views. Well done. And now, new clients are messaging you. All because you're using LinkedIn Premium, which helps you get the business growth you want. Think big, small business. Think big. Start your free trial at linkedin.com/premium small business. That's linkedin.com/premium small business.
The new McCrispy Strip is here. Dip approved by ketchup, tangy barbecue, honey mustard, Sprite, McFlurry, Big Mac sauce, double dipped in buffalo and ranch, more ranch, and creamy chili McCrispy Strip Dip. Now at McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
We're back here on Buckeye Talk. Stephen Means, Stefan Krajisnik, and Andrew Gillis. What a way to kick off the aura conversation by saying that Archie Griffin has so much aura that you can think of him in a singular way outside of just the guy who's Woody Hayes' best running back. So let's go 4-3-2. I think unless someone else has a case for someone other than Archie to be number one here, this is your opportunity.
If Archie didn't win the second Heisman, he still has a case to be number one.
Good question, though. If Archie doesn't win the second Heisman, is the case shakier?
Shakier, but
like I still
think the end result is Archie number one in this part of the conversation.
But is it
the end result
number one?
Probably not dominant, because is the end result still a statue?
He doesn't. I don't think you have a statue with one Heisman Trophy, because that makes you no different than Eddie George and.
But the only counter would be that the Rose Bowl played a decent part in the statue, and if he had played in 4 Rose Bowls, would that have still transpired the way that it did? I'm not saying he only has a statue at Ohio Stadium because they put one at the Rose Bowl, but I think those things do a little bit go hand in hand.
I think he has a statue at the Rose Bowl because he's one of the most important people in that bowl game's history.
Mm-hmm.
I think he has 2 statues because he has 2 Heismans.
I could get behind that.
Because no other football player at Ohio State has a Heisman Trophy. Has a statue. It's just Woody who has a statue. And he also has the building name after him, but he has a statue.
We could have this debate because part of the statue is also because of what he did post-career, too, I think played a part.
For sure.
I think I would probably lean with you of if he didn't have a second Heisman, he probably wouldn't have the statue. But he won the second Heisman.
Yeah,
and he has a statue.
This is a what-if just to have more conversation, because it's the fact that like the only guy with 2 Heisman trophies also has 2 statues. But also, if he doesn't have 2 Heismans, does he conduct himself the way he has for the last 50 years since leaving here and since his NFL career ended? Right? Yep. Because Troy Smith's not around. Or the other 5 Heisman Trophy, are they around in this capacity? The ones that are still living, obviously. Are they around in this capacity? Eddie, even before Eddie got into coaching, it wasn't like he was super, super around the program. You knew he was a Buckeye. He showed his support. It was not hidden at all. But it's not like he's not around the program the way Archie's been around the program for the past 50 years since his
Wasn't the CEO and president of the Alumni Association?
CEO and president of the Alumni Association. He's a great Buckeye who went on to be a really, really good NFL player and has now found life after the NFL, whether it was in the business world or, he's been in some TV shows at times, and now he's coaching. He's kind of finding his way out here, but it's his life. Archie's life is Ohio State centric. And is his life still this Ohio State centric if he doesn't have 2 Heismans? In a way that's so public with the Ohio State centric way of it. Because
I bet Archie's life still would have been very Ohio State centric. I wonder if it would be talked about at Ohio State as much as it is. Because not only is he super involved with Ohio State and great foundations and things of that nature, he's also the only guy who's ever won the Heisman twice. As opposed to this guy won the Heisman and he gives back to Ohio State.
And let's not be wrong here. If you have a Heisman Trophy and you go 3-0-1 against Michigan and you are as legendary, please welcome to Ohio Stadium, Archie Griffin. You can't hear anything. The crowd goes nuts.
Yeah, but that's when you're in the building.
I think the crowd goes nuts. I don't like to put it in to give an example. I'm not sure he's dotting the I if he doesn't have a second Heisman. I don't know if that's
probably not.
Eddie George won a Heisman. He didn't dot the I. I mean, look, maybe he will, but maybe he will one day, but he hasn't done it yet.
When Bowling Green plays here in a couple of years.
That's nasty work. Hey,
Can you imagine him just wearing all of his...
Take your headset off real quick. Come on over here and celebrate and then get back to coaching.
Him just wearing his orange and brown, just like walking out, dotting the I, and then going, "A Ziggy," or whatever that thing is that Bowling Green does that I don't understand.
The second Heisman is why he dots the I. It's why we care so much about him still being around to this degree. It's why they had decals of his face on the helmets. It's because of that second Heisman. It's to what Andrew was talking about yesterday with the Heisman stuff. I don't think the Heisman can be a trump card when everybody can't get it. But I think 2 Heismans is always the trump card.
This is why he's gonna win. It's because it's the perfect combination of Columbus kid who loves Ohio State, who gives back to Ohio State, who is the face of Ohio State football. Oh, by the way, he also won 2 Heisman, so that really helps his case.
There's no flaw. Because typically what you see is, oh, he's a pretty good player, and now he's a great alumni. Or he's a super awesome player who is an alumni in terms of, oh, we claim him because we developed him. Archie's both. The only thing missing is if his NFL career had turned into a Hall of Fame NFL career. If you give him Eddie George's NFL career, we don't do this bracket. We're talking about
for the Cincinnati Bengals. This guy could win every election in the history of Ohio.
He could be the governor. I think if he ran for Ohio State governor, I don't think he would win, but he would.
I mean, Dressel's making a
yeah.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine like Archie Griffin just gets out there and he's just like, we're gonna take this state and we're gonna turn it around 3 yards in a cloud of dust at a time. And he just like, you know why we're gonna win by this? Because they wouldn't let me go for blank. You know why I'm gonna do? It's like he could just like invoke all kinds of Ohio State quotes and people would love it.
The closest election in Ohio history is Tressel versus Griffin.
I'll say this.
That's the final boss of our greatest Buckeye challenge. Yeah, we need
who becomes governor,
Laurinaitis or Eddie George to run for governor, and then we'll have a debate about those two.
I won't say 100% he'd win governor. I will say 100% if he announces today that he's running for mayor, the race is over before. He didn't even have the campaign. Just show up August 30th for the Texas noon kickoff before the game.
We don't know technically.
Not confirmed.
I said what I said. But my whole tone was facetious with that. Obviously, it's not official yet. If he shows up before the game, pregame, he decides randomly to grab a microphone, go out to the block O and go, "What's up, Columbus? OH! I-O! OH! I-O! I got some news for you guys. What? I, Archie Griffin, 2-time Heisman Trophy winner, 4-time Big Ten champ, 3-time Slayer of Michigan, have decided to run for mayor of Columbus. Yeah! The game doesn't matter anymore. Everybody's leaving and they're going to the polls.
This is exactly why the Aura conversation is hilarious, because this didn't turn into, is this a debate? We're like, could Archie Griffin win governor of Ohio? Could he be the governor of Ohio?
I'm glad that we've reached the Final Four and we don't have to beat around it anymore and can kind of just go straight at it. Yeah. This guy would win governor.
It's like, was it John Kerry in like 2004? He like went to Michigan and he was like, I go for Buckeye football. Everybody's like, what the hell are you doing? Why would you say that? I don't know if Archie could win anywhere else. I don't know if he's like going to like Indiana or Michigan or Pennsylvania and winning.
Probably win in Pasadena.
He could probably win in Pasadena. He could win in a lot of places. And Ohio's, it would look like these poll results, I think, that we've had on Buckeye Talk.
He can win in Pasadena. I think he'd be public enemy number 1 in Michigan, but everywhere else, I don't know. I like Archie's chances. Listen, we're going to have a discussion about 2 through 4. But we're giving Archie his flowers right now. From the 513, is there anyone that can supplant Archie? Only 2-time Heisman, and being around the program for as long as I have been alive is hard to beat. I do think Jeremiah Smith can get close if he wins one more title while he's here, and at least one Heisman. JT Barrett and Troy Smith have the Michigan success, but not the national. Stroud had the most talent, but team success does not line up. And then Scott from Charleston, South Carolina, loyal texter. Shout out to you, Scott. I think the discussion begins and ends with Archie Griffin, two-time Heisman winner, associate athletic director, president of the Alumni Association, etc. Otherwise, I'd say Coach Tressel, strong character guy with success against Michigan. Eddie George, Heisman and success in the NFL, followed by success as a head coach. Also mentions A.J. Hawk and Bobby Carpenter as long, successful NFL careers, tough as nails, and an ongoing media presence. And then Woody Hayes, obviously. It's just, listen, if Archie goes out there on August 30th and says he's running for mayor, we know who's our new mayor.
If we ever have Archie on this podcast, that's the first thing we're telling him, by the way, that we had a 10-minute conversation about whether you could win the mayor of Columbus or you could win governor of Ohio.
I'm going to ask him to be his running mate. What are you talking about?
You have a dedicated listenership already ready to go. We have the media apparatus for you to start.
You want to know the easiest route to becoming lieutenant governor? Run with Archie Griffin. Which also, easiest way to get to the Rose Bowl? Run with Archie Griffin.
Apparently it is. Run with Archie Griffin. Okay, yeah, Archie's number one for me. It's just, you know what's crazy though? With someone with this much aura, I don't know if you two have ever had the chance to meet him, but you've been physically in the same stratosphere as him. Do you feel intimidated by his presence?
By Archie?
And you know what I mean by that. Sometimes when someone has been an idea and a figurehead off in that world for a while, and now it's like Urban Meyer was
it's like, kind of like, it's like a form of starstruck that's not like really starstruck, but
yeah. Because you meet him, it's like, man, this is a good guy. He's a little guy. This dude was running through college football for 4 years. But it's like when the first time I was ever in the room with Urban Meyer, like his aura is real. And sometimes some of it's because he's just such a serious person. But it was like, whoa, that's Urban Meyer, right? If you're in the room with LeBron James and you grew up watching him, there's probably a part of it that's like, whoa, that's LeBron James. I don't know if it's the same with Archie, but it's not. I'm not saying that negatively. I'm almost saying it as that's kind of part of the point here. Is he is so around that it's just like, oh yeah, Archie's here. Of course he is, right? It doesn't feel like this mystical figure off in Buckeye land. He's always there, and not in a way that's like, oh my god, why are you always here? Just kind of like that's how connected he is to Ohio State's program, where you could just be randomly up there chilling out in the lobby of the Woody, and he'll just walk by.
There's this element to like he is the nicest, kindest, like, and not soft spoken like in a bad way. I don't know what the best way to phrase it is, but
he's
like
a normal dude.
Yeah, like I remember. So the first time I had met Archie, or at least been around Archie, was when his statue was unveiled. It was frankly like one of my first weeks in Columbus, and I was like, great, I'm gonna go what statue unveiling for a 2-time Heisman Trophy winner. This will be an easy job. And like the ceremony like went in such a way that it was not Archie being like, look how cool, I have a statue, or hear everyone come up on stage and talk about how good I was. Like, I don't know if I've ever seen a guy just genuinely more happy to be like surrounded by Ohio State people, former high school teammates, former college teammates, people who worked in the athletic department, fans who showed up. Like, there was a genuine joy to just be around Ohio State people, whether it was for his statue or not. And it's like, this guy, if you're wearing an Ohio State shirt, this guy probably loves you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is hilarious, but like, that's kind of just how he carries himself.
Does that make
I can imagine if like, and I'm sure Ryan Day would tell us this if you asked him this, but like his first day on the job, Urban Meyer's first day on the job, Jim Tressel's first day on the job, I guarantee you there was an element of Archie Griffin making it feel a little bit easier. At some point, there was a phone call or a conversation or something, I guarantee.
If I'm remembering correctly, he played a role in the search. So did Clark Kellogg.
CEO of the alumni. So
I mean, listen, yes, yeah, you're right. That's probably you're in charge of the alumni, baby. Does this make him a better human being than us, Andrew? Because I don't know if I'm this humble if I have 2 Heisman trophies. No, actually, I know. Every day, I'd be walking around in shirts that say, remember, I have 2 things that you don't even have. I don't even have 1 Heisman.
I would hang out by my statue. Like, I'd just be sitting there. Someone walks up like, oh, that's you. I'd be like, yeah, it is.
Yeah. They'd be on. They would not be in the facility. They'd be on my lawn.
I think I would wear my jersey to the grocery store, or wear my jersey to wherever I was going.
Because it's
let people, just a gentle reminder of who I am.
But you want to know why I'd keep them on my lawn? Because one, they're heavy. You're not stealing them. And if you do, it's like, it's okay. I have another one.
In sunny California, which is also where I would be.
Yeah. I wouldn't be living here. No, I love Columbus. I'm from Columbus, though. That's so, of course, my trash.
You would have a second house in
For my second Heisman.
Yeah, for your second. Yeah, you have two houses, one in Pasadena, California, and you have a trophy room of your first Heisman season. And then in Columbus, you have your second Heisman season, and you have a trophy room dedicated to that.
Well, and I would tell Nissan, it's not Heisman House, singular.
Yeah.
I want Heisman houses.
I cannot believe that's not a commercial yet. Him having two Heisman
houses.
If Nissan is listening, I think we might see a commercial pretty soon.
Come holla at us, Nissan.
We need kickback from that. We need, at least give us like sponsorship. If you give all three of us a car, you can make that commercial for whatever you want. Deal.
I accept this deal.
Give all three of us a car, and we won't ask for anything else.
Give them a car. I want the money. I own.
Sell the car after you get the car.
Yeah, but sorry,
that's a really good idea. The Nissan Heisman houses for Archie Griffin.
I would be so annoying because everything I would do would have to be done in twos. Because it's like, well, I can't just have one. I can't just have one ice cream cone. I need a second one because my other Heisman's going to get lonely. Give him one too. I would be so annoying if I had two Heisman, which is why I don't have two Heisman trophies. Archie Griffin's the right man to have two Heisman trophies because he doesn't go, "Hi, I'm Archie" with two Heisman trophies. He's, "Hi, I'm Archie."
Could you imagine the like juxtaposition if Archie was a 2-time Heisman Trophy winner and then like Johnny and Manziel had won it a second time? You'd quickly be reminded why everyone loves Archie so much.
You think that's why they didn't after they won it so young and like Jameis and Tim Tebow didn't win it and they only gave Baker once out of the 3 times he got there because they looked up and said, "Man, this guy's better than he was last year." But it's a bit now. You can't let anybody join Archie.
Well, look, I like Archie and Johnny Manziel for 2 different reasons. It's very much a left side of your brain and a right side of your brain.
Right, but it's the element of, let's just say JJ wins the Heisman this year, and then he's trying to go get it again in 2026. But you're not just voting him against his own Heisman season. You're comparing him to Archie. So now you have to I don't know, man. Would Archie have celebrated after scoring that touchdown? Probably not. He would have handed the ball to the referee.
You're not a baseball guy. You're not a baseball guy, are you?
No.
So this is actually legitimately a debate with the Baseball Hall of Fame where people will vote on the Hall of Fame, and there were years where obvious candidates would not get a unanimous vote because the unanimous vote was supposed to be held for a certain number of people. Like Stefan, I think Mariano Rivera got the unanimous vote.
Yeah, something like that.
But what I'm saying is, it's when you are that good, it's almost like, oh man, can we put him in that category? Like you were saying, Stephen, can we put Jeremiah in that category with Archie? Because it's an interesting dynamic. I think we probably could.
JJ is a great kid. If baseball people are doing that, that's stupid. Multiple people get into the Hall of Fame every single year. There is one Heisman Trophy winner per year. And so if we're going to already be uppity and only give it to 3 positions, be even more uppity when the guy's trying to get a second.
This is just a random take that I've had for a little bit. I don't think we're far from someone winning 2 Heismans.
I think JJ is positioned to do it.
JJ is positioned to do it.
I'm real with you. A lot of these 2024 recruiting class kids who popped as true freshmen are very much outside of even Arch. I don't know if Arch is going to go pro. I don't think there are a lot of early season Heisman Trophy candidates who are going to not be playing college football after 2025. I think there is a world that exists where all 4 people who get to New York this year are back in college football 12 months from now.
And NIL adds to that.
And right.
There's an incentive to come back for a 4th year.
There's not a lot of middle class in college football. There's a lot of young superstars and a lot of old superstars who have been around the block for a little bit. There's not a lot of, this is my first year being NFL draft eligible guys right now. So to your point, I wouldn't bank on it happening, but I'm not going to be shocked if sometime in the next 5 years we have a guy win it twice.
Which is crazy because here we are 50 years later thinking okay, maybe it's going to happen soon because it hasn't happened in 50 years because that's how good Archie Griffin was.
Well, that's how good Archie Griffin was. Playing so young is a still relatively new thing in college football. I know we're 20 years into this now, but that's why Orlando Pace was so special because whoa, there's 2 freshmen ready to play football right away. Right? I mean, think about that. They used to have freshman teams in college football. So we went from that world to Orlando Pace starting as a true freshman, to Maurice Clarett leading a team to a national title as a true freshman, to Tim Tebow winning the Heisman Trophy as a redshirt freshman. And I think he was the first one to do that. And then Johnny Manziel did it. And then Jameis Winston did it, right? And so the sport has gotten younger, which means you have more cracks at it. versus it being a guy who's draft eligible or a senior or a fifth-year senior where, of course, he can't win it again. He's going to be in the NFL a year after this. So that combination of younger guys are awesome earlier, and there's old guys who are playing 7 years of college football. That's how it happens. Archie's clearly.
And also, well, just real quick, and also it's gotten harder because if you're great, you can now, like in Archie's era, you had to stay for 4 years. I believe the first early entrants were like the late 80s, early 90s when you could enter the NFL draft after your third year of college football. Couldn't do that for forever. So it is harder to win too now because odds are if you're in the Heisman conversation as a junior, you're probably going.
Right. But now we're talking 2025. Most of the superstars of college football right now are sophomores. The two dudes on the cover of a video game are sophomores. And if you go look at, and we're bringing the video game up because we're millennial babies. A lot of the people who are on the cover of that game, even the deluxe version, are sophomores or guys where it's like, is Nussberger a fifth year guy?
If he's not a fifth year, then he's definitely a senior.
Okay. Because I'm trying to figure out if he has another year, if he wanted to come back. I'm trying to figure because I don't think
it's going to be his fifth year.
Are we? So he got here in
2021. He redshirted. I'm looking at it right now. He played 4 games in 2021 as a redshirt, so he's entering his.
Okay, so he's not a COVID player. So
no,
he's legitimately.
The only COVID year guys right now are the 6th year guys.
Right, and I don't know how many guys from the 2020 class are still in college football. Okay, but DJ Lagway's a sophomore. Dylan Stewart's a sophomore. Ryan and JJ.
But even guys who are juniors, who are in the Heisman conversation, I think you've almost kind of come back in a circle where, I mean, there's Heisman finalists who haven't been top 20 picks.
For sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, you could be a junior and say, hey, I mean, Quinn Ewers could have came back this year and gotten it back more than he would have gotten in the NFL. He made a decision, and I'm not saying that's a wrong decision. I'm just saying Quinn Ewers could have won the Heisman a couple years ago. And he also could have decided to come back and try to win another one next year. Now,
the difficult thing about that is because of how similar the NFL and college have gotten in terms of offenses and defense, like how they're running things a little bit. It's not one to one, but there was an era where there were guys who were winning Heisman trophies, but then they weren't necessarily like Troy Smith won the Heisman trophy and he was like a 5th round draft pick, right? That's not really happening anymore with these younger guys. Like if you're a Heisman Trophy finalist as a junior quarterback, then you're probably going to be at worst a 2nd round draft pick. But I think the point still stands of this is probably the best era in terms of players having the best chance of if someone's going to win 2 Heismans, it's going to happen now. And here's all the reasons why. Is because you might be a superstar by the end of your true freshman year if you go to the right school and you're the right talent. And so now you've got 2 shots at it versus Marv coming onto the scene as a sophomore. And so he really only has like 1.5 shots at it, essentially.
Are you still quoting 30-year-old movies? Have you said cool beans in the past 90 days? Do you think Discover isn't widely accepted? If this sounds like you're stuck in the past. Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. And every time you make a purchase with your card, you automatically earn cash back. Welcome to the now. It pays to Discover. Learn more at discover.com/credit card. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
So Archie's number 1. Stefan, who's your number 2?
Yeah, I went back and forth with it a little bit. I went with James at number 2 just because I do weigh pretty heavily the current involvement and what he's kind of been able to do with Ohio State's linebackers room, even after he's done being an amazing linebacker at Ohio State. So I went with him number 2, with Spielman number 3, and Eddie George number 4. Because this is the Wheaties box weighed more into this for me than into the moment, if you remember from the last podcast.
I had Spielman 2. I had James last here. And you had Eddie last when it comes to aura. The abs aren't getting it done. You'd rather have the Wheaties box than the abs.
The 2 through 4 conversation was very difficult. Let's just say that.
And I think this underscores it. I went James, Eddie, Spielman, 2, 3, 4. So we all had a different order for 2, 3, 4. And we had a hilarious, hey, this is the number 1 guy conversation.
I hate both of you for this. Okay. I don't I just think being on the cover of a cereal box at 17 years old is a pretty big deal.
We'll have a video game conversation when we do this again in 5 years.
Yeah.
That conversation.
What was the bigger deal? Wheaties box in 1980, whatever that was, or NCAA football cover in 2024?
Wheaties box because JJ's not the first cover of a current athlete.
Okay, that's fair.
If JJ, granted, like obviously he was going to be a true freshman, but if he was on the cover last year when the video game had just made its return, I'd maybe say I'd lean that way because that was a large gap, very anticipated return. This is like year 2 of the return.
I mean, Bryce Underwood's on the cover and he's a true freshman. But I think it's this. It's what Stefan just said, but it's also an element of when Chris Spielman was on the cover of the Wheaties box, it was like, whoa, we've never seen that before. I didn't even know that was. Because you got to think about who they reserve Wheaties boxes for. It's Olympians, NBA and NFL and NHL and champions. Highest of the highest in sports get on the Wheaties box. And now there's this kid from Massillon on the Wheaties box. I'm trying, isn't it? It's cool that JJ is on the cover of the video game. Is anybody shocked that JJ is on the cover of this video game?
No.
Right. I mean, Andrew, we were at practice last spring. And by then it had been official that the game was coming back. They had already put out the first they hadn't put out all the trailers and stuff, but we had that first teaser during like February of the guy who was in the Rose Bowl talking about, we heard your cries, we heard all the stuff, we're back finally. You're not telling me after that first day of practice or after that student appreciation day you didn't go, yeah, that kid's gonna be on the cover of a video game one day.
It took about 6 seconds for me to skip video game and go, that guy's gonna be an all-pro receiver in the NFL. Even video game was not on my mind.
Right. His trajectory is so different that him being on the cover of a video game just feels like crossing off another checkpoint of what we think JJ is going to be long term. So that's why I gave it to Spielman. Because if
I'm not mistaken, was Jesse Owens the only other Buckeye to be solo on a Wheaties box?
So it's Spielman and the guy who told Hitler, aha. Yeah, man. I'm not. You guys are not wrong. I do think there is an element here of James is putting his aura to good use right now and rebuilding Ohio State's linebacker room, and that has to matter to an extent. It has to matter that his father is a since passed former wrestler who was a pretty famous wrestler as well, and that I think that plays into his aura a little bit because he's a little warrior animal. His father's road warrior animal, and James is a little warrior animal. So I think that plays into it. I do agree with that. But I went with the guy on the Wheaties box and then the guy who has the abs. As Andrew put it, a photo just as iconic as Muhammad Ali calling his shot. So why'd you got...
Just because I like the role James has with Ohio State now, and I like Wheaties box. So someone had to be last.
Why'd you have...
I think these 4 guys, like, we can have debates in all the other categories, team success, accolades, what the 4 best guys in the bracket are, right? Like Michigan success, moment. Like, Jack Sawyer, I think, is top 4 in moment, right?
For sure.
And James Laurinaitis is no doubt, top 4 in Michigan success, all that stuff. I think these might be the top 4 aura guys that were in the bracket.
I think the only other one who has chances, there's 2 who I think who are knocking on the door. Chick Harley, because again, they built the freaking stadium after the dude. And I just think Braxton Miller is to Ohio State football what Allen Iverson is to the NBA. They're both great players, but it's just as much about what they meant to an era of young people watching this team play. Yes, 24-0 to start off the year, but all that stuff is great. Come on, man, spin move. The dude he was like Michael Vick in college. So I think those 2 have say, but I do think all 4 of these guys belong, especially in this category, Andrew.
Yeah. I went with James second just because I think the post-career stuff does matter a little bit and kind of involvement in hhow people view you. Laurinaitis obviously came in, like his dad was obviously a pro wrestler, so he did have a little bit of like do you remember like his dad had like the shoulder pads with the spikes on them or whatever, like
people started wearing them at games.
Yeah, like he had that going on, and people really started to matter and care about James like at a different kind of level that you typically see for linebackers. I think Eddie, I go back to the crowd chanting Eddie and how just much of just how unique it looked when you saw a player like that take the ball out of the backfield. Like, this is a hilarious kind of addendum to this, but like on my TikTok For You page, I saw the 1995 Bob Hope All-Americans, and you saw them all running in, and it's like Ray Lewis and Teddy Bruschi and all these other guys. And it was a very like unique show. Then Eddie George just kind of rolls in there and he's bigger than everybody else in the room. And I was like, this guy's a running back. And I just think people remember the Eddie chants and the moments and just the aura of, man, if we need 3, he's going to get 4. If we need 7, he's going to get 8. Like I just think that there was such a confidence in Eddie that not a lot of people had. And then Spielman, I had him last. Like, it was a tough conversation, I think, with 3 and 4. I had him last, and like one of the reasons I had him last is when he was on the Wheaties box, he was in a Massillon jersey. He wasn't in an Ohio State jersey. And I know the aura was set up earlier than when he got to Columbus, but we're talking about guys and what they did when they're associated with Ohio State. And I know he had committed to Ohio State, but he wasn't at Ohio State yet. So I was like, I don't know if I'm being unfair here, but that's what I did.
Ooh, that's called splitting hairs right there. I have to respect it.
It was hard. Look, it was really hard, man. It was really, really difficult.
It's the ultimate nitpick, but I respect the nitpick. So that's us. That's how we rank these guys in these 4 categories. Again, it's accolades, it's team success, moments, Michigan success, and overall Buckeye aura. That survey is now going around 614-350-3315. That'll do it for this bracket. We'll reveal the winners and the reactions to those on Monday. Tomorrow we're going to close out the week because it's recruiting season is officially arrived. Well, I mean, it never really ends, but visit season has officially arrived. So Andrew and I will sit down and talk about Ohio State's first weekend of official visitors, a pretty explosive list with some important targets, but also some important commits coming to town. Camp start next week, and we'll start looking forward with some other things because we're not too far off from Ohio State playing its first game of the 2025 season against Texas on August 30th. It's going to be at some time, and the sun will probably be out. Get the text, 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that for Stefan Krajisnik and Andrew Gillis. I'm Stephen Means, and that was Buckeye Talk.